Hello and welcome to Fiber Friday Part 2. Uh, we're filming this on January 1st, so Happy New Year to everyone, and I hope this year is wonderful. Um, I do have a couple of crochet goals that I wish to accomplish this year. The first being is I'm wanting to finish off all of the old skeins of yarn that I no longer have labels for. I was gifted a lot of these, so a lot of them I don't actually have a project in mind for. Um, I am also wanting to get better at amigurumi, find a couple of patterns that I like and want to make regularly because sometimes you just need something simple to work on. And so far that has been the turtles from this last year, but I'd also like to broaden those horizons. I would also like to get really good, or at least really good for myself, in micro crochet and complete several pairs of earrings that I have in mind for the rest of this year. Moving on from crochet goals, this video we are primarily going to be talking about hooks and pretty much all about them. Where to begin when selecting a hook. So if you don't have any hooks before starting any of your projects, but you have a yarn or a yarn type in mind, you are going to want to read the yarn label and see what is recommended for that. Now, if you already have hooks, or maybe you're wanting to start from the beginning and learn about the hooks and the yarn and how to read all of that before buying any products, hopefully this video will help you out with that. So there are a variety of ways to pick up hooks and select which hook you want to buy. You can buy a complete kit, which will come with steel crochet hooks and regular hooks. This side is mostly empty right now because I've got them spread out across my desk. You can also buy individual hooks from different companies, everything from Temu, Amazon, and some of the top name brands' actual websites such as Prim, Furls, Boy, Susan Bates. I know there's one I'm forgetting, Addie. There's a few others, and I may have murdered their name. That's just how I've heard them pronounced and pronounce them. But depending on project in that, your size of hook will change, varying based off of that. We'll go into the sizes after I go into the anatomy of the hook, so it'll make a bit more sense as to what I'm saying size-wise. First and foremost, on every crochet hook, all of the parts of the crochet hook are going to be relatively the same. So using one of my large plastic ones, the head of your hook is up at the top. There are two options. You have tapered and inline. Inline is going to be pointier with a much deeper neck or throat area, depending on how it's referred to. You'll hear people refer to them as the neck or the throat. The tapered, the neck area is much narrower, and for some materials that can help or be a hindrance. Both hooks for that. Again, the pointer tip on the inline, however, the head of the inline should be perfectly in line with the body, whereas with the tapered, the head oftentimes is not in line with the shaft area or shank. This area right here in between the neck and the handle area is your shank or shaft. This is also sometimes referred to as your working area. This is where the stitches will typically be sitting on as you're working them. This is also where the diameter of the hook is measured from to give it its designation of which size it is, depending on the size chart used. Again, more on that in just a few moments. Other parts of the handle is the handle where your hand sits and the thumb grip. Not all crochet hooks will come with a thumb grip. A large portion of them will, but not all of them. Now, the thumb grip area is typically where you will see the sizes and labeling of what hook size you are working with. That's not true for all of them. Some of them, it will be printed rather than marked in or engraved. Others, it'll be on the handle where your hand sits. I don't typically love those ones. In this particular one, they are slightly engraved as well as painted. If you have them just painted on the end, you do run into a risk of, over time, that number wearing down and not being able to read that. So while not necessarily part of the anatomy of a crochet hook, there are some things to take into consideration depending on the brand that you're wanting to use and your hand needs. So if you have arthritis or mobility issues, you may want to consider a ergonomic device or ergonomic hook style. Ones with handles attached to them typically are labeled as ergonomic. Ergonomics change varying depending on what your needs are. On Amazon, Temu, and several other places, you can find these foam rollers. Let's see if I can't move my hand out of the way for you. Each of them have a hole at the top and at the bottom. Now, each of these holes are going to be slightly different diameters, and typically I've seen the foams sold in 5-packs, but they can hold up to 10 different hook sizes, because depending on which side of the hook holder you're putting them into is the size for that hook. They are not the worst grip holder. They are not the best for me personally. For others, they are perfect. You've got crochet hooks similar to Addi. I don't own any, so I can't really show them, but they exist. They have what's referred to as a swing hook. Some people find that a bit more comfortable in grip. Furls and a few knockoff brands have this much more rounded grip here. This one is a little bit heavier. It is not a Furls, it is a knockoff. I bought it from Temu because it was as a free gift with purchase of other items I was purchasing. And I figured I'd like to try the shape of it before committing to a high quality one. I'm still testing that to see if I like it or not. But those kind of shapes, that is pretty distinctive to Furls. And obviously they're knockoffs. Other crochet grips that can be ergonomic and helpful are things like this one. This one is by the Clover brand, and it just comes apart. You stick the hook inside after attaching one of the many attachment pieces that they have that's supposed to help prevent it from going up through. I do have 2 of them. This one I bought years and years and years ago. I was probably 19, 20 when I bought it, and that was a significant time ago. The plastic bits I usually end up either losing or end up having them break. What I found that helps me with that is I have thermoplastic beads that I have made a little attachment that goes under them or onto it as its own. So that way if I lose the rubber stoppers or they break, fall off, what have you, I don't need them. Hooks just go inside. It allows me to have my favorite handle with every single type of crochet hook that I can get to fit in this little bit of a diameter. It's not for everyone. They are not easy to open or close, so they are not always the best. If you have difficulty unscrewing things, you will need help. But it has been one of my favorites. I am always looking for better or more comfortable grips. There's some really fancy stuff out there. There's some silicone attachment ones. I don't know all their names or descriptions. I just have what I have. So when it comes to hook brands, depending on the brand you're using will depend on a variety of different factors. So all of these hooks right here are from different brands. I've got my Susan Bates, my Boy, which is a steel, this one is a steel hook. And then I have an off brand that I don't know where I got it. It doesn't have a brand name on it. It just has the 2.25 millimeters. If I line them up and make them even, their sizes, as you can see, are all 3 different heights. Now, that typically is not a problem in crochet hooks for most people. The steel hooks tend to be a lot smaller with a lot less working area. That being said, the working area is adequate for the fact that this is being used for lace and thread as opposed to a bulkier yarn. The other main difference you'll have in them is the working area or shank space between that and the head. Some of them will have significantly more working area than others, and this will depend on your personal preference in how you crochet. Myself, I tend to be right up here with my hand all up on the yarn fibers in order to control as much of my tension and everything using both hands. Other people tend to have their hand significantly further back and allow the yarn to just do what the yarn's going to do there. Neither option are wrong as long as it works best for you and you are achieving the results that you would like. Now, that being said, there is some things I have noted when it comes to crochet hooks and material used to make them. Let me set these guys down. So as I mentioned with the crochet hooks, there is two main types, the steel hook or thread hook and the standard yarn hook. With that being said, no two hooks, even if they are designed to be used similarly or with similar measurements, are identical. You'll get some of them that say that they are a size, but they are not being accurately measured, is my only guess because there's no way that they match. For example, I have two versions of a 0.75 millimeter hook. I'm going to try to hold it up to this camera, but I may have to switch to my other camera to get these both in view. So don't think it's very clear. So I will be switching to my smaller camera to get a quick clip of the two different size hooks that I have right here. So okay, so here's that up close on these hooks that are both listed as 0.75. As you can see, those two hooks do not look like they could be the exact same size hook. That one is a 14.75 millimeter, and this one says 0.75 millimeter. They are very obviously not the same size, despite having the same size measurements. So when verifying which type of hook you have, sometimes the size posted on it may not be accurate, as my clip a moment ago may have shown. Depending on the brand and the quality of the brand will depend on how accurate the sizing are. If you're ever concerned that your project is not turning out despite using the correct hook size, changing your tension, and the stitches are coming out either way too small or way too large, there is a chance that the hook itself is not well made. A lot of the name brand ones will have a bit better quality control, but brand to brand, they might be slightly different. If they are different, there are two ways to correct this issue. You can get a micrometer and measure the shaft area to verify what size that hook actually is supposed to be labeled as and adjust your labeling as needed. If you don't have one of those, you can try going up a hook size or down a hook size. Now, I've mentioned sizes a few times up till now. Let me go over what I mean by that. So depending on where you're at in the world and how your hooks are labeled, such as if you were to buy hooks that are primarily made in the UK versus ones that are made in Canada or in the US, you will get different size markings on them. Some of them will include multiple sizings on them. Most of the time, if they're going to include multiple sizing, they are going to be using metric sizing, which is going to be the 0.6 up to 35 millimeters. Those are the known hook sizes that I am most familiar with. So with the standard variety and sizes, when it comes to steel crochet hooks, those are going to be your smaller size. They're also going to be made out of steel because of that smaller size bending and warping very easily. Those sizes typically that you'll find the steel crochet hook in is 0.6 at the smallest that I have. I've seen advertised for 0.5, but I don't have any of those. The smallest I have is a 0.6, which goes from 0.6 up to, I've seen them go up to as large as 3.5. There is some crossover in hook sizes depending on material made and uses of. The hook sizing for the steel hooks can be measured in obviously the millimeters, which is the most consistent across all of them, but they will go from a large number down to the smallest number that they have, which from my understanding is the 3.5, which is a 00 in US, but you'll get them starting at 14, 13, 12, 11, or in the UK where they might be slightly different labeling on them, the 0.6 can start at a 12 and adjust from there. So that could also affect the outcome of the product. If the person you've got the pattern from says to use a number 12 hook, if you're using the UK sizing, the number 12 is going to be 2.75 millimeters versus the US where it can be labeled as the 1 millimeter. Those are quite a bit of difference. Your crochet charts will also depend on sometimes the brand themselves, adjusting where the numbers are. That doesn't happen as often, but it is known to happen. When you go up to the larger yarn sizes, so from the steel hooks onto the standard crochet hook, what most people just refer to as a crochet hook, those sizes again can overlap with the steel hooks, starting as low as the 2.25, which is the smallest one I have. I don't think I've seen any come smaller than that in anything other than the steel hooks. They do go up to, as far as I've been able to verify, a 35 millimeter or US. They may make them larger, but I'm going to guess that if they do, they are going to be custom for a very specific project and material, as 35 millimeters is rather large in and of itself. I actually don't know what somebody would use those for. Most of your crochet kits are going to come in starting about the 2.5 to 3 millimeter starting size, all the way up to usually about a 6.5 in your standard kits. You can buy other hooks outside of that that are smaller, more unique shaped. I have, for example, my P hook, 8 to 9 millimeter range. I've only ever found them in plastic and in resin. That doesn't mean somebody doesn't make them out of other material, but that's what I have found them in. So I'm going to use my Q hook here for an example. My Q hook is listed as Q17, and then it says it is 15.75 millimeters. My standard chart that I've used, that is one of my preferences, lists the 15 millimeter at a P/Q. Now, mind you, the green one I have is listed as a P, and this one is listed as a Q. My P is listed as P16 at 11.5 millimeters. They are both from Boy hooks, and if I were to probably pull up the Boy hook chart listing, it's going to tell me that these hooks sit in a couple different places depending on their chart measurements. Now, the one I personally use indicates some crossovers, such as the P is listed at the 11.5 and the 15 millimeter. Other charts that I have seen list the P on 10 millimeter and the 15 millimeter. It just depends on brand and what they're referencing. Knowing your chart can also help you make sure that you're grabbing the correct hook size. Because again, if somebody's project is asking you to use a 10 millimeter hook and you're using a P hook from one of the hook charts that lists the P under a 15 millimeter, your stitches are going to come out looser and not ideal. When you're using hooks for different projects such as amigurumi, that larger size can actually leave gapping and have fibers show through, versus if you're trying to do something that's light and flowy, such as a cardigan, and you want that slightly larger holey look. If you're expecting a 15 millimeter hook, but you're using a 10 millimeter, your stitches are going to be much tighter and much more dense, and the project will eventually feel a lot heavier because those stitches are going to be smaller and tighter. Most of the hook sizing, like I said, is fairly standardized. I do tend to prefer to go off the millimeter as opposed to UK or US sizing, just because the numbers and the letters can change up. Some brands will have a 2.5, where other brands will sell the kit with a 2.5. And while 0.25 millimeters does not sound like a drastic difference, depending on the medium you're using, that can make a significant difference in your total outcome of your project. There are charts out there that cover all the different conversions of hook size from each of the different measuring devices, as well as a listing of what recommended yarns to use, as well as the yarn weight, which can help you read your labels and make sure you're using the accurate hook for your project. Wrapping things up here, I'm going to go ahead and ask if you like the video to please like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all those things. If you have any questions, comments, differences that you've noticed, please feel free to put those in the comments. I apologize for some of the probably not so great editing. I am still learning the editing software, which is where you might see some cuts in the clips. I am working on that and hoping to get better along with the rest that I'm doing here. I thank you guys for staying and watching, and I hope you have a wonderful new year.